What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Welcome to the Be Great podcast. I think this is episode 46. Today, we are going to be going over top 10 wide receivers for the upcoming 2025 NFL draft. Obviously, I've done quarterbacks, I've done running backs. Now we're on to wide receivers. This wide receiver class is solid. It's solid. I don't think it's one of the best ever, one of the worst ever. I think it's right there in the middle. It's all right. There's some really great talent, some sleeper talent, and some talent that I think is being overrated. But we'll get into that. All right. First, let's start off with honorable mentions. Before we get into the top 10, I have four honorable mentions that are just outside the top 10. One of them, Ricky White, wide receiver out of UNLV. He's had a great career. He had a great season last season with UNLV. UNLV as a whole had a great season, despite their quarterback Sluka leaving really early on in the season because he's a scumbag. But I won't get into that. And I think Ricky White could be a solid receiver in the NFL. Not saying he'll be elite or he'll be generational. I think he could be a solid talent in the NFL. Same with Nick Nash. Tremendous season out of Nick Nash out of San Jose State. One of the best wide receivers stats wise in the NFL last season. And you have to take that into consideration. And I think he's a great talent as well. Savion Williams, he's a guy who I think could be used in a bunch of different ways, kind of like Debo Samuel. I just wonder how that's going to. I just don't think he's going to be as good of a Debo Samuel. So, how much do you value a less talented Debo Samuel? Let's be honest here. Especially since I think everyone's opinion of Debo Samuels has fallen off a cliff in the past couple of years. But I think Savion has potential. Isaiah Bond, if you would have told me that I wouldn't have Isaiah Bond in my top 10 at the beginning of the season, I would have told you were on drugs, need to be booked into an insane asylum. But that's where we're at right now. Isaiah Bond, the second best quarterback, quarterback, what am I saying? The second best wide receiver out of Texas, the second best Texas wide receiver in this draft by a lot. Isaiah Bond, he just has injury concerns. He was really good at Alabama, and it felt like he kind of freefalled once he got to Texas. I know injuries played a part in that, but even when he did play, he simply wasn't making as much of an impact as someone else that we'll talk about later, who I'm really high on in this class out of Texas. And I just think it was a very disappointing year for him overall, which is unfortunate. At 10, this is a guy who I have been high on for a couple of seasons now. I saw him play against Colorado in 2023. He had a tremendous game. In my opinion, he almost single-handedly beat Colorado. That was Deion's first year at Colorado. And I think this guy could be really good at the next level, and that's Torrey Horton out of Colorado State. I think this guy is special. I don't know why more people aren't higher on him, but I really like the talent. I think he's really good. I think he might have some personality question marks, but for the most part, I think he's a tremendous player, plain and simple. And he absolutely destroyed Travis Hunter when he played against him 2 years ago. And I see him being really good. Not necessarily a star, but I think he could be really good at the next level. A solid wide receiver too. At 9, Jack Betch, however you say it. He had a tremendous Senior Bowl week. He had the game-winning touchdown in the Senior Bowl. He's at TCU. He was at LSU to start. He's the guy who's really come along. I think he could be just a really solid workhorse, lunch pail guy at the next level. And I think he's going to be just one of those consistent guys you can always count on. I don't think he's going to be anything, crazy. Like he's not going to be a Jamar Chase, but can he be, a Lad McConkey? Of course he can. I don't think he's as fast as Lad McConkey. I don't think his route running's as good, but he's one of those types of guys, hardworking. You can count on him. He's going to have really good games, and I think he could be a solid wide receiver 2 option wherever he lands, but I don't think he can be a wide receiver 1. At 8, Tez Johnson out of Oregon, another guy who was practically unguardable at the Senior Bowl. Um, I think he could be really good at the next level. He had a really good season for Oregon. Um, he's ironically I don't know if he was. I mean, he. I think he was. The story was when Bo Nix was at Oregon. Bo Nix's family took Tez Johnson in. Is that the story? I think that's the story. But he's a really good receiver. He was with Bo, and then he was with Dylan Gabriel. And I think that Tez, I think it'd be. I think the Broncos, ironically, who have Bo Nix, could use a Tez Johnson. Absolutely, I think they could. And you match him up with um, a Cortland Sutton, and I think that could be a really dangerous duo for years to come, and that could really help Bo Nix in his development. At what number are we at? 10, 9, 8. At 7, I think, did I say Tez Johnson was 7? Because Tez Johnson was 8. At 7, Jalen Royals out of Utah State, a guy who's been flying up draft boards, it seems. A guy who was on a bad Utah State team. But I think he could be. Do I think he could be elite at the next level? I doubt it. But again, I think he could be a really solid young number 2 option for a team. I think he could be a really nice option for a team like the Ravens, for example. And I think any team that will be able to draft and get a Jalen Royals will be better off for it. At 10, 9, 8, 6, Trey Harris, a guy who, when I was originally making my top 10, I thought would be higher up on my list because I do really like Trey Harris. I think Trey Harris is when you start to get into potentially wide receiver 1 options. Trey Harris played a lot in the slot for Ole Miss, and he had a really good season, to be quite honest with you. He had a great season. He wasn't a great offense though, with Jackson Dart throwing him the football. I think he could be a really nice slot option for a team like, let's say, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have Calvin Austin, but you always want a chance to upgrade, and the Steelers need receivers, plain and simple. And I think Trey Harris could surprise a lot of people because I don't think many people are really talking about Trey Harris. And I mean, Ole Miss wide receivers. I mean, look at DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is a stud. Personality concerns, but a stud nonetheless. Now, Trey Harris isn't built like DK Metcalf, but Trey Harris is a tremendous wide receiver. And I think could be a number 1 option on the team. At 5, we have Alec Ayamaner out of Stanford. Now, I remember watching the Stanford Colorado game where Stanford was down by a lot. They came back and magically won that game. And there was a play where Alec Ayamaner absolutely mossed Travis Hunter. And from that moment on, I have been in love with this man. Maybe I shouldn't say it like that, but it's already said now, and now I have to live with it, so it's what it is. But Alec Ayamaner, he's a big body wide receiver. He can get physical, really good in the red zone, and I think he could be amazing for someone in in the next level in the NFL. I've heard a lot of people talking about, the Steelers. Alec Ayamaner is a Steelers type of receiver. He is, but I don't know if the Steelers want. He's different from George Pickens because George Pickens makes those acrobatic catches, and that's what I don't really know if I consider George Pickens to be a physical receiver because he kind of isn't. If we're being honest, he doesn't play like he is, and Alec Ayamaner is. But George Pickens is a red zone target, a really good one at that. And so is Darnell Washington. So I don't know if Alec Ayamaner should be the goal. I would like more speed out of my receivers. Although Calvin Austin is supposed to be that, I don't think he is that yet, and I think you can get someone better than a Calvin Austin. Um, but I would like Alec Manor for how about the Washington Commanders? That could be a nice one. You put him opposite Terry. Terry's more of a speed guy, not really the physical type of wide receiver. I think that he could be good with Jaden Daniels. So yeah, that's what I like for Alec, and I think he can be really, really good at the next level. I think he's going to end up going probably early second round. I think. I don't think he'll sneak into the first. I just don't see that. I think there's really only four max wide receivers that I could see in the first round, um, and we're actually about to get to that four. At four, I have Emeka Egbuka. I think a lot of people have him at three. Um, I have him at four. I have one concern. I've thought a lot about Emeka Egbuka because originally when he was at Ohio State, I loved him. I thought he was amazing. But as the years went on, I kind of started to realize that Emeka, even at Ohio State in college, was just a career wide receiver too. Behind Jeremiah Smith, behind Marvin Harrison. He's junior. Sorry, Marvin Harrison Jr. He's just a career wide receiver too. And so what I do not want is for a team to take Emeka Egbuka wanting him to be their number one option. That's what I don't want because I don't think Emeka can be that. Now, luckily, he's been sliding back in the draft. He's about in the 20s at this point now, and a lot of those teams don't need him to be the wide receiver one. I'll tell you a team I would love Emeka to go to, and that is the Detroit Lions. Pair him up with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams. He won't be the number one target. I personally would love that. I would love him also with the Washington Commanders. I think because he doesn't have to worry about being the star receiver, about being the number one guy if he's with the Commanders in Washington. He just has to worry about doing what he needs to do to support Terry, to take some attention, any attention he can take off Terry will be beneficial. Okay, but I don't want Emeka to go to for example, the Panthers. That would be disastrous in my opinion because the Panthers need a star wide receiver. They don't really have a wide receiver one. I mean, they have Adam Thielen, who's old. I don't think Xavier Legette is ever going to be a wide receiver one. I don't think they really have a wide receiver one. So I don't want Emeka to go to a team like that. I want him to go to a team who has a star receiver, but could just use a second option. Like if the Bengals, if they don't keep T. Higgins, I would love Emeka Egbuka for the Bengals. I think that'd be fantastic, especially with, oh my gosh, Jermaine Burton being an idiot, which I knew, I called that from a mile away. He was an idiot at Georgia. He was even more of an idiot at Alabama. I mean, you could have seen that coming. At 3, this is a guy who's flew up draft boards, flown up my draft board. I love this player. I watched my Georgia team play him twice, and that's Matthew Golden out of Texas. Matthew Golden was Texas's best offensive player against Georgia both times they played them. He is really good at getting open. He's great. He has great hands, and I think he could be amazing. I think he could be a star. I really do. I think whatever team gets Matthew Golden got to steal. Now, I don't know if Matthew Golden will end up being the third receiver taken. I think Emeka could get taken over him. I would love Matthew Golden for a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers who need a receiver. I would love him for, I would love pretty much any receiver I would love for the Washington Commanders. I'm going to be honest. Hey, I kind of would like him for the Chiefs. I mean, just saying. Would I want that? No, but I'm just saying. I would love him for the Bills. I would love him for the Bills. because I think he's going to go. If he goes first round, it's late in the first round, and if not, he'll be the first receiver taken in the second round. I think Matthew Golden. I'm a Steelers fan. I would love for if we draft Matthew Golden. If we walk away from draft night with Matthew Golden, I will not be upset. I can promise you that. At one and two are pretty much universal. At 2, I have Luther Burden. Luther Burden is interesting because we'll have to see how he's used. I think that I've drafted him to the Steelers in a lot of my mocks. I think the Steelers could use a guy like Luther Burden. And at the end of the day, he's extremely talented. He had a little bit of a down year, I think, in Missouri this past season, but even that for him was an amazing season. And I think he could be really good at the next level. I worry a little bit because he's not the biggest guy. So I worry a little bit about him at the next level. But, I mean, look, when he played Georgia back in 2023, I mean, he was constantly open, burning our corners, so burning our safeties. I think he could be really useful in Pittsburgh. I think he's a nice kind of difference from George Pickens. I think they will fit nicely together because they're two very different types of receivers. And at 1, obviously, I have Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona. I mean, the guy's a star. He's big body. He's a Alec Manor, but better at this point. Big body receiver, can win 50-50s, great red zone target. I think he'll be a top 10 pick. I think if the Raiders aren't able to draft a quarterback in the top 10, I think they'll pick Tet. And I think he could be an option for the Cardinals. Or sorry, not the Cardinals, the Panthers. I was thinking Carolina, and I said Cardinals. He could be an option for the Panthers. He could be an option for the Jets. Who's another one up there? I mean, could he be an option for the Giants at 3? I don't think so, but they do need a big body receiver. All their receivers are on the small side, even Malik Neighbors. But, yeah, I like Tet. I think he'll be a top 10 pick, and I think he'll do wonders for whoever takes him. And Tet would be the exception. I said I wouldn't want an Alec Manor with George Pickens. Tet is an exception because Tet is just such an amazing player. And if Tetairoa McMillan falls to, I think the Steelers are, 21, 22, falls that low, I mean, you have to pick him just based off the talent alone. I mean, that's just what it has to be. But yeah, that's my wide receiver rankings for the upcoming 2025 NFL draft. Next week, we will be doing. What should we go? I think we'll go offensive tackles next week, huh? Something interesting. Get into some big boys, some offensive linemen. Just offensive tackles next week, and then after that, we'll get into the interior of the offensive line. We're talking guards, we're talking centers. Okay, that's what we'll get into there. And then after that, maybe I'll go straight to defensive rankings, or maybe I'll just go and do another mock. We will see. It will probably just be another 1-round mock. We'll see how I feel come that time. I'm sorry this episode got out a little late this week. Of course, I would love to get it out on Wednesday, but had some things going on this week, some personal things. That's okay. Hopefully we'll be back to regular next week. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I don't care if you like and subscribe, but I would love if you did. I guess saying I don't care and then I love if you did, that doesn't make sense. But hey, it's Valentine's Day, so you can't judge, okay? But I hope everyone has a tremendous Friday. Happy Valentine's Day, and go Dogs.